Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Monday Morning Musing. This is Steve Crosby. We are going to spend the next few weeks diving into the so-called Lord's Prayer for a little bit. A friend of mine several months ago asked me a very good question about the line about leading us not to temptation. So I want to just unpack and give a little background, a little bit of cultural background to the so-called Lord's Prayer. First of all, I'm not crazy that it's called the Lord's Prayer. It's really the disciples' prayer. It's the Lord teaching his disciples how to pray based on a question they asked, based on something they saw in his life. So that's where we're going to go for the next few weeks, and we're just going to dive into this first episode today. Now, I'm aware that there are subtle differences in the text between Matthew and Luke. We're not going to go into those kind of details. You can't go into those kind of details in a 5-minute or 7-minute devotional. We could spend weeks on this topic. I'm simply going to say that the short version between the difference between Matthew and Luke's version was speaking to a different audience with a different background, with a different needs, and there's some variations in the text. And that's all I'm going to say on that part of it. First of all, we don't appreciate, as modern Gentile, Western, Christian, evangelical, for the most part, of those of you who are listening, Christians, how big a deal prayer was for the people at the time of our Lord, for Jewish people at the time of Jesus's mortality. You and I would consider what I'm about to say, most likely consider it to be very legalistic. And that's unfortunate. As a people, they were a praying people. They would pray 5 times a day. 3 for sure, but most likely 5 times a day. They would pray the Shema or the Shema twice. The Lord our God is one. They would pray in the morning. They would pray at 3 p.m. and they would pray again in the evening. We would probably think the best comparison is that sometimes when we look at Islamic practices in the Middle East, how they have the regular prayers. And you and I would not normally want to bring that practice into our so-called Christian experience. And it's just another example of when people say, well, we want a New Testament church, or we want to do it the way the New Testament did, or the way that Jesus did. Well, sometimes we really don't know what we're talking about. We don't understand the cultural implications. The trumpet would call them to prayer 3 times a day as a people. And for those of us who are, spirit-filled grace people, that just reeks of bondage. Well, I'm not so sure of that, and I'm not so sure our idea of bondage is necessarily what their idea of bondage would be. My point is, prayer was a very important part of their existence. It wasn't something you did when the Spirit led you, when the Spirit moved you. No, it was integrated into the very fabric of their daily existence. And there's another thing that's going to kind of rub the hyper grace people the wrong way. That tradition, and there's the dirty word, tradition. We don't have any traditions. Everybody's got traditions. In the Didache, that practice of routine prayer was carried over into the early church experience. It makes sense because most of the early conversions were Jewish people, and they carried over a lot of their Jewish expression, their Jewish way of doing things, the Jewish way of looking at things, their Jewish liturgy. My point is, prayer was not something incidental. Prayer was something, it wasn't something occasional. It wasn't based on your need. You live a normal life, blah, 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 go to work, sleep, blah, blah, blah. Oh, crisis, I'm going to pray, back to normal, blah, 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 blah. Crisis, let's get people to pray, blah, 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 normal. Crisis, let's do a Facebook post and get people to pray, da, 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 da. Ooh, I wrecked my car, let's get people to pray. Ooh, my cat died, let's get people to pray. That's the way we tend to do things. That's not the way they did it. Prayer was formal. It was integrated into their very existence. So, when the disciples asked Jesus to teach them to pray, it's in the context of a praying culture. It was something very important to them, something about their existence. And they wanted to pray like they had seen him pray, because he prayed differently than how most people prayed. And just like his teaching was different than many people who taught at that time. We've heard a lot of people teach, but not like this guy. It's the same thing when it comes to prayer. We've heard a lot of prayer, but not like you pray. We've heard you pray, Master. Teach us to pray the way you pray. So that's what the Lord's Prayer is all about. It's in the context of a praying people. So that's going to be all for today, and I'll see you the next time.